I don't understand what mine was doing because it just kept the camera was cutting out on its own. I wasn't doing anything.
Right now I'm trying to get my audio straightened out because in the process of trying to find out why I wasn't hearing anything, I screwed up every single setting I have on my switch panel. So
You guys are live.
Sounds good.
well, that's right. The audience can tolerate a little bit of technical difficulties for a couple of minutes while we sort things out.
While we sort these out, welcome to our Friday night roundtable. My name is Jeremy Bishop, and this is Frank Johnson, who is having the other technical difficulties.
Frank Monkeypox Johnson.
Oh yeah, I was watching that on
yes, Monkeypox.
Yeah,
yes,
Glenn Beck or something this morning. I was laughing about that. Good old monkeypox. Make sure that if you can't control the urge to go reach out and touch somebody, make sure they don't have open weeping pustules first before you cuddle up real close to them. But I guess there are just some people who can't resist the urge. So here we are, monkeypox. I'm gonna take my name badge off for work because we don't need that. I was playing around with my water bottle, and I've determined I really like this kind of reverse image beat up look.
All right, I can dig that.
Yeah.
Hey, can you turn up your microphone gain a little bit?
Let me try to mess with it.
Ow. Everything is so messed up in my office this week. I had to try and find some documentation from the sheriff's department so I could go acquire some more firearms. And I turned my office upside down, and now I'm editing a whole bunch of videos, so everything's a mess here. So you have to please excuse my inability to to remain focused.
How's this? Is this any better, Frank?
Oh, much better.
Okay, perfect. I had it on auto, so I got it up. Perfect. Well, a couple things I wanted to bring up tonight is we talked a few weeks ago about how terrible the schools are, and they never talk about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, things like that anymore. And I got invited to my daughter's play Wednesday, and I don't know, I'm kind of an asshole. I haven't gone to any of my daughter's plays or anything since she's been born. She's almost 10. And finally, I was like, you know what? I'm going. I don't care. Work can wait. It'll be there when I get back. And I've always used the excuse, I can't, I have to work. I can't, I have to work. And finally, I said, no, I'm going. So I decided to go to this one. And I'm so glad I went because this whole play and production was about the Constitution, the Boston Tea Party, the Bill of Rights. And I was like, this is amazing that the school that my 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old goes to is willing to talk about this stuff. It is a charter school. It's not public, but
that was going to be my question. Is this a public school?
No, it's a charter school, but I am so happy that she's going to that school, and they didn't like hide around anything. It was amazing. I mean, it was kind of, dumbed down. It was for kids, but I couldn't be more happy.
Well, it's I gotta say, it's definitely nice that you're able to experience what so many other people don't experience anymore when it comes to their kids, as far as their education is concerned.
Oh yeah. Well, we talked a bit to my older daughter a few weeks back. We had her on for a few minutes, and we asked her what kind of stuff she learned in school and things like that, and she basically said nothing. They asked her, she's like, I think we learned about the Fourth Amendment. And Vass asked her, oh, what is the Fourth Amendment? She's like, I have no clue. So my 19-year-old, who is in the process of signing up to be a Marine, doesn't know anything about the Constitutions or the Bill of Rights. Not that all of them do anyways.
Well, I would say hopefully the Marine Corps is able to instruct and fill in those gaps where
public education failed.
Yeah.
I sure hope so. But, and if she gets in and she makes it through boot camp, I'll be extremely proud of her. And everyone's like, you're going to let your little girl go and join the Marines and go to war? I'm like, if it happens, it happens. I tried to join. I just couldn't. So if that's what she wants to do, good for her.
You have to bear with me for a second as I continue dealing with speakers.
No problem. So something while he's messing with that came up today. Hillary Clinton to avoid direct responsibility for the role.
I keep trying to deal with the audio issues that I'm having, because it seems that my audio input is going through my broadcast medium, my switchboard, but all the audio that's coming out of my computer is coming out of the little computer itself, and I'm trying to get it to come through here.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
And now I have no audio at all again. So
keep messing with it.
I'm trying to straighten it out.
While Frank plays with his computer, Hillary Clinton to avoid direct responsibility for a role in disinformation campaign against Trump. And Turley, as it would turn out, of course, she can avoid anything, any prosecution, anything she sees fit. And anybody who speaks otherwise will sing in a obituary soon enough. I believe the person who was leaked that was somebody who was on her campaign or at one point or another. And now, of course, they're going to disappear. You'll see them in next week's obituaries. But, if you're a Clinton, you can do whatever you want. All you got to do is spend some time in politics, and all of a sudden you'll be a multimillionaire, one of the most powerful people in the world, and get away with whatever you like. So there's that. I'm going to pull up the YouTube channel here in case anybody has commented, and if I can see anything on there. Let's see.
I said I'm still dealing with a couple of issues here, so I am terribly sorry for this. We're a little early ahead of schedule today, and unfortunately, it kind of caught me off guard.
Nope, you're good. Let's see some stuff in other news here going on. No comments on the YouTube channel. No comments on the Facebook page. Remember to join in and chat with us if you have anything you want to talk about. Let's see. Let me in, Vass says. Vass, let me text Mike to let you in because we don't have the authority to do that. Frank, can you hear me again or no?
Yes, I can actually hear you now and speak and hear in proper tone. I seem to have ruptured one of my audio cables in my quest of mayhem this week here in the office, and just managed to get it straightened out. So I apologize for the delay.
All right. So I don't know if you heard me at all. I was talking about Hillary Clinton to avoid direct responsibility for the role in disinformation campaign against Trump. One of the people on her staff at one point or another, or on her panel, said that she was, not only did she know about, but she approved a lot of the stuff that was said and put forward against Trump. And she, of course, is blatantly denying that ever happened. And we'll see him in next week's obituary.
Yes, he'll wind up becoming the next Vince Foster.
Yeah, it just, you can't mess with a Clinton and get away with it. And if you want to be one of the most powerful people in America, all you got to do is join into politics, and all of a sudden you'll be a multimillionaire and extraordinarily powerful.
Well, we got to give this guy a little bit of credit because he actually got something on the record.
Yeah.
Before his impending demise. Everybody else who's tried to testify never actually got on record unless they were accusing Bill of sexual impropriety, rape, or assault, or something to that effect.
And, of course.
By then, they had already been so far into the media that if they should happen to find themselves in a public park with 3 rounds in the back of the head, being told that it was a suicide, it would have been suspicious. This person, one of the campaign managers for Hillary Clinton, managed to get it on record under oath that this evil, vindictive woman was not only giving approval for the leaks, but behind their being devised in the first place. Allegedly.
That says allegedly.
Allegedly.
I'm sorry, Vass. I'm trying to get Mike Marshall's attention to let you in. This is one thing we'll have to work on.
Got to think of the censors.
Yeah.
Well, I usually end the whole paragraph with allegedly.
Now, are we talking about Letterkenny allegedly or something else here?
No, I usually just say allegedly at the end. Somebody's, he's a really nice guy. Allegedly. Oh, the food in that restaurant is delicious. Allegedly.
Come on, Mike Marshall, let Vass in. We need permission to do these things.
Yeah, we're gonna have to split this up a little bit so that we each have access to it. So we all have to have equal access to everything so that we can all function simpatico way should one of us not be able to attend. And I guess this evening we're gonna speak of a range of issues, not excluding the horrible situation that happened in Buffalo, New York this week, and how what happened could or could not have been avoided, or I don't know, if it was even possible to avoid that situation. Yeah, Mike says it's a red flag law fail as usual. It's also a complete failure of the New York State SAFE Act. And it's also a tremendous failure of the media. And I just happen to think that the whole damn thing was entirely too coincidental that it should happen when it happened, where it happened, and I just people are going to call me a conspiracy theorist for what I'm going to say, but I just believe that if they're talking about all of these UFOs and everybody's talking about UFOs, everybody gets distracted from the UFOs, they don't care about it. By Friday next week, there'll be an alien landing on the lawn of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Well, I've been saying forever, as I'm sure you have as well, is every time they need a distraction from something, all of a sudden there's a mass shooting or a shooting of some sort or some tragedy that just has to grasp people's attention for that week.
Right, and as Voss has pointed out, there was an Asian shooter in California, or another mass shooting that was nobody heard of. There were 4 mass shootings with what the FBI classifies as a mass shooting, with 3 or more people being falling victim. There were 3 more mass shootings this week across the country, none of whom were reported on by mass media at all. They didn't even escape out of their state media. It didn't reach a national media level, not like this one. This is the one that reached the national media level because it fit a particular narrative. And oh my God, I'm alone again. Yeah, that's right, Vaz. They didn't fit the media profile for how should I say the way that things the way they believe things look. It didn't fit that profile, so naturally it had the other ones didn't matter. Those lives don't matter. The people who were shot in those lives don't matter because they don't fit into that cookie cutter mold that the media wants to foster. It's just you get the conversation all the time about uh, white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy. No, nobody even hears about white supremacy. You hear about it on the media. We don't see Klan rallies. You don't see crosses burning. You don't see all of this crap happening. You had one incident a couple of years ago in Charlottesville, and we can still debate about the motives behind that, and what had happened to that, because there was a lot of that precipitated that situation that nobody ever spoke about because they all concentrated on what Trump said after it happened. So, there was that, but nobody ever talks about, and then all of a sudden, all of these things is saying, all of a sudden, well, look at that, a white supremacist pops up in Buffalo, New York, of all places, one of the states who has the strictest gun policies, and probably a reason why none of the people in that store were able to defend themselves from this individual. Yeah, and boss, there he is, and yeah, Michael, you are absolutely 100% correct. The media did only release portions of this guy's manifesto that fit his narrative, that fit their narrative, without going into, they automatically try to paint him as some right-wing, Trump-loving, pickup truck driving, tobacco chewing, chainsaw carrying good old boy, when the truth of the matter was he was anything but.
Well, as it always is. Vass, I can't hear you.
Now you can.
Yes, I can.
That was on my side. One of the things that really caught me that was interesting, Rolling Stone magazine came out with an article on the shooting. And, they had something in there that was very important that the public should have known about and no one else covered. In the manifesto, the shooter identified that the reason why they got body armor, which is now that they're trying to get rid of that so we can't defend ourselves, the reason why he got the body armor is because he was afraid of three things. He knew there were armed guards who had to protect himself against them, and he was going to target them first. He was afraid of the police. And the third thing, which somehow was missed by every other source in the media, he was afraid of the concealed carry of American citizens, because he was afraid that someone, either legally carrying or illegally, had a weapon on them and they would try to shoot him and stop him. And that's important to realize, because red flags failed, New York Safe Act failed, ghost guns failed, magazine bans, weapon bans, they're all failed. And the one thing that was going to be effective and was significant in his planning, his 5 months of planning, was that there could be a citizen that, unbeknownst to him, that he could not identify otherwise, that had a firearm and was able to defend themselves. And he was confident that that was going to be less of a problem, because New York State had nerfed the Second Amendment and denied people the ability to protect themselves. And so that's why he was confident he could go forward. Although it was a concern of his, it wasn't significant, because he knew it wasn't going to be a problem.
Well, criminals prefer unarmed targets, and that's exactly what New York State served up to this guy. Served him up 10 unarmed people to be slaughtered at his will. And probably, and not only the fact that New York makes it so difficult for you to get the means of protecting yourself, but New York also does a pretty damn good job at convincing people that they don't need to.
Yeah. Oh,
and telling people that they don't. People in New York have the assumption that then, because it's a may issue state, not a shall issue state, that they're not going to be granted that permit. But in the reality is, if you're outside of the 5 boroughs of New York, you got a pretty damn good chance of qualifying to get a concealed carry permit. I know I've taught hundreds of people.
I know you have. But they don't want you. They don't want people to think that. And the thing I get is, this wasn't reported by the New York Times. It wasn't reported by the Washington Post. This was buried This was a story. This was buried in the middle of a Rolling Stone magazine trying to convince people that they shouldn't buy bulletproof vests, that this shouldn't be something that they are legally allowed to do. And they bury it in there. And the media, well, the public should be aware that the number one thing that's going to protect you, that these crazed, psychotic, evil criminals, the number one thing that they have in their mind is you can protect yourself. You are the biggest source of protection. And they want people to think, well, no, you can't do that. You're not capable of protecting yourself. Why not?
Well, no, they don't want you to think that you are. And this case makes me think about two other cases. And the first one being, I'm sure you guys remember the Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting, where the shooter went in after he had a well thought out plan of how he was going to distract the police. I don't know how much media coverage that got, but he set up his apartment to have the radio start blasting at about 10 p.m. and he had rigged his apartment with barrels of fuel to explode when somebody opened the door. So his theory was, okay, the radio is going to blare. I'm going to get a noise complaint. Police are going to come kick in my door. When they do, it's going to blow up. And every cop in Colorado is going to be at my apartment while I shoot up these movie theaters. He had time. He planned it out. He talked to people about it. He, too, was an insane nut job who people ignored, even though everyone said, this guy's a little crazy. We should probably look at him. And then it also goes to the shooting in Vegas at the country concert, where this guy had time to plan out to be able to get, 20 plus weapons into that room, and then be able to barricade the door completely, and was able to rent the room that he wanted that would give him the most access to the stage. Come on. These are smart people, but they're deranged psychopaths, and they're given time to plan these things out.
Well, there's two other cases that I think are relevant and recent that people should be thinking of, because we're talking about radicalization. They want to make it's about white supremacy. Well, wait a minute. What about the New York subway shooting, which is a month ago, where a black supremacist who is motivated by the BLM CRT, that whole media push, the idea that white people are evil and black people are victims, and you can never change that this ideology that created the riots we saw in 2020 and 2021 and the violence we continue to see today, that they just totally ignored the fact that he's a supremacist, and they threw that out the window. We don't even hear about that story. It took 3 days and the story's gone. What about the Waukesha shooting? The Waukesha parade driving massacre, where that one man, and these are both black men, who also believes in black superiority, who believes in the CRT BLM movement and Antifa type, that he was in his car, watched people at November 24th in a parade, and said, hey, they're all white. Let me use my car to drive and to run over these innocent people who had no idea what's going on simply because of the color of their skin. That story was around for 3 days, and they killed it because, wrong profile. It doesn't match. And in all these cases, including the ones you're mentioning, Jeremy, what do we have? We have a crazed, psychotic, vile individual who's making a criminal act, usually with a lot of planning, and the media is going, well, we can't talk about that one because it doesn't help us get more control and make the people depend on the government more. No, this one gets the story that we want, and make sure that certain target groups like black individuals, blacks and Hispanics and minorities, will vote the way we want them to vote. And I find that to be both insulting and dangerous for the public.
Well,
You're 100% right.
Well, I'm going to give you another one you don't hear anything about, and this one really surprises the hell out of me because it happened on my birthday, and I remember when this happened. One of the stupid thoughts in my head were, knowing how the media was, as soon as it happened, I says, like there are some days that we always remember, Pearl Harbor, the Titanic sinking, those days that are always linked with a historical event. When the Virginia Tech shooting happened, it was April 16, 2007. I thought to myself, I will never in the rest of my life, my birthday is April 15th, have another birthday without turning on the TV and hearing somebody in the media talking about it was the so-and-so anniversary of 33 people being shot and killed, another 23 injured. And I suggest everybody go back and look up the Virginia Tech shooting and look at the picture of the perpetrator, and you'll understand why it was not something that you never hear about it anymore.
Well, it's the same as the California Laguna Woods shooting.
Yeah, this is 15 years ago, and you don't hear about it at all.
See, but I remember all of these things. I remember all of these cases. And
we also don't hear any more about the shooting at the gay nightclub in
Orlando.
Last year, where the police sat outside for 4 hours. 4 hours while this guy went through that place executing people.
San Bernardino.
Same thing happened to that. What was it? An elementary school or no? It was a high school. The one David Hogg magically appeared from. Yeah,
Parkland.
Yeah. Cops stayed outside because he was scared to go in.
Yeah, and by the way, here's something that a lot of people forget. 1 year after the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, there was a report that was done for the state of Florida to determine how they could best protect the kids in those schools. Got no coverage. Do you know why?
Because they said
it had to do with armed people.
Because they said that the SROs, the police officers on duty, that depending on the number of students in each school, they should have X number, at least one, if not more, of these armed SROs, that they should be armed and that they should allow teachers to be armed as well if they choose to. That's all in their report. And obviously goes right out the window, goes right against all the media and progressive Democrat, that ideology that we're being told that you can't defend yourself and you shouldn't try and you can't defend your kids. And in every one of these cases that we have mentioned, and there are more, and I remember many more of them, over and over again, we get the same result, that if the public were defending themselves rather than waiting for however long it takes for police and law enforcement to come to try and protect them, knowing for a fact that the most dangerous time in any of these incidents is the first 3 minutes. The first 3 minutes are the most critical time in every one of these cases. And if we do not have people who can protect themselves, the body count goes up higher. Yet they want to tell us that it is dangerous to own a firearm. It's dangerous to protect yourself. And now we hear them say, we need Bill A352. It's a New York State bill from the New York State Assembly. Please look it up. From last year, January of 2021, they're trying to bring it back now. That says that you cannot own body armor, a bulletproof vest for yourself or for your children, even though all the security for Cori Bush, for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, a bunch of the movie stars that we watch on a regular basis, they all have armed, bulletproof wearing, body armor wearing security, but you and I can't do that for ourselves or our family. And that is self-defense. 0 people have ever been killed because they wore body armor. It so aggravates me. It makes me so angry. And when I look at people and they go, but Mike, don't you get it? It's white supremacy. Listen, that's the 7th thing that we've been told is the most important thing that's happening in our government that we have to be worried about. We have to worry about ghost guns. We have to worry about white supremacists. We have to worry about jobs was another thing that Biden said was number 1. It changes every month.
Monkeypox.
Well, that's the next thing.
Well, here's something else that's come to light too.
And that's Michael Marshall
coming out, and generally takes a couple months, 2, 3, 4, 5 months after the event, where it comes out that the FBI or some other law enforcement agency knew about this person before the act of shooting.
Well, yeah, that happened with all three of the cases I mentioned.
Mhm.
Okay, and
this one
I
too.
have a feeling that the 3 active shooters that happened this week,
Mhm.
we're going to end up finding out this same scenario where at least one of them was known beforehand.
Salt Lake City, Utah, University of Utah campus. I can't remember her name, but there was a girl who had a restraining order against a guy because he'd been harassing her, and she tried to get firearms for something, couldn't. He obtained a gun illegally and killed her while she was walking around campus.
There's too many of these.
Mhm.
We see this all the time. That you know what, crazy is pretty obvious. Well, no, not that everyone who's crazy is going to be a mass shooter, but everyone have seen people who are crazy, whether it's a homeless guy who's trying to beat someone over the head with a brick in a subway station, or it's a guy screaming Allahu Akbar running down Manhattan after he just ran over 8 people, injured 11 others in a pickup truck, or whether it's these mass shooters. See, they love to say these things and go, oh, but the answer is we have to take away the weapon. How many cases can we point to in the United States? Las Vegas, woman runs over 8 people, including an 11-year-old girl in 2017. How many cases do we have to go through where we can show crazy is crazy? But the motivation of the crazy lately has been pushed because of the division that the media is pushing, that certain celebrities and certain political ideologies are pushing, that are dividing America. And by continuing to divide America, saying that you're ultra MAGA, or you love your guns and your God, and trying to denounce a huge swath of America, that this isn't helping anyone.
Well,
It has never helped anyone.
Well, listen, I'm going to give you just a point to solidify that fact. Well, you see the subway shooting in Newark disappeared. This one disappears. That one disappears. I'm sitting here looking at the name of the guy who did the Virginia Tech shooting.
Yeah,
it has motive underneath why he did it. According to whatever this is, now I don't know where. I looked it up on Google, and according to Google, they have the article right next to it. The motive is possible retaliation to bullying, misanthropy, and mental illness. Okay, now
they got it right in the third one.
Right. Well, they have. Look. Well, here's the deal. You look. If you want to hate people, hate people. I don't care if you want to hate people. If you don't like a particular race, a particular culture, a particular religion, I don't care if you don't like somebody. I don't care for what reason you don't like somebody. That's your personal choice to like or dislike somebody, whether you like them. I don't care. If you don't hurt nobody and you're not denying anybody anything and you're not causing them any kind of grief or pain or whatever, hate who the hell you want to. You know, there was a reason why the humans are called tribal. Because we deliberately separate ourselves into groups to which we are most comfortable. So we are all set up with a natural distrust of other tribes. Now that may relate to color, that may relate to color, race, creed, religion. It can be any reason that we distrust or we don't hang out with or whatever. And sometimes that boils over into dislike and hatred. Fine, I don't care. That's on you. You got to be the one that's got to go to bed with that, wake up with that kind of hate in your heart. That's up to you. It's when you act on it. It's when you act on it that it matters. But here's the thing. Sane people can hate people all day long. You can be perfectly sane, perfectly normal, and say, I don't like this group of people. Maybe you have reason you don't like a group of people. Maybe you grew up in an environment with every day that people from that group picked on you or abused you or treated you badly or whatever the case is, and maybe you don't like those people. And you know what? That's fine. But the minute you act on it, takes you from being a normal person who hates people into mental illness. Mental illness is what drives the people to actually act on the motivation that's in their heart that may or may not be filled with hatred. You may have people that turn around and have some sort of mental illness where they see people of one different race or color or creed or religion, and maybe in their mind, they see something you don't see. They see something we don't see. You know, it's like when we look at the color blue. Is the color blue that I see the same color blue that everybody else sees?
No, of course
No.
No.
We all have, our brain represents that color to us as the same name, but maybe different to every one of us. So people have a different viewpoint on other groups. It's when they act on it that it turns around and it falls into either evil or it turns into mental illness. Like I said, people can hate people all they want. I know people who hate people every day of their life, and they would never, ever think about hurting somebody. But they just don't like people. That's their prerogative.
But it's about control. But it's about control. The government is trying to control the way people feel. How they put out the stories so that you will feel a certain way about the story by eliminating, just happening to omit certain facts that would change the way that you feel. The government's trying to control what we can say. We have small businesses. We have the internet overlords who want to control the words we use, which means the thoughts we think. We have the Ministry of Truth, the Disinformation Governance Board, that, by the way, folks, it's not gone. I know a lot of people are celebrating, saying, well, we beat that bullet.
No, it's on pause.
Exactly.
Yeah, only their leader, only their elected bureau chief.
Right. But here's the scary part about that. And people aren't thinking it through. In 2.5 months, 75 days, what they're going to do is rename and redescribe the mission statement of it. They're going to put it in a new department, bury it, release it on a Friday when no one's paying attention, when there's another news story out that everyone else is paying attention to. And they're going to go and do exactly what they've been doing, which is talking with the news media. Remember, the Biden administration, December 2021, didn't like the press they were getting. So they actually were coordinating with the major news media to try and get better stories out, reported by the Washington Post, by the way. So it's a left-leaning source. Don't tell me I don't know this is real. It's true. You can look it up yourself. So they're going to go and do exactly what they were meant to do, which is to control the words that we use, the way things are being said, to control how you think and how you feel, which is definitely what we see in a very explicit way in all of these mass shootings that the public gets to hear on a national level, not necessarily on the local level. And it's just, my God, it makes me so angry and it makes me so fearful. And yet, as angry as I might be, as fearful as I might be, in no way does that mean that I would ever harm anyone.
Well, here's something too that we need to bring up in these discussions, because most sources don't bring this up. Okay, I don't know if anybody knows who John R. Lott is, but he's an economist and a political commentator. He's also a gun rights advocate. He wrote a paper and put it on SSRN, and in that paper, it's titled "Corrections to the FBI's Reports on Active Shooter Incidents." In that, he cites from 2014 to 2019, there were 162 active shooter cases. Of those, 36% of the active shooter attacks occurred in places where guns are allowed. Of those 36% that occurred in places where guns are allowed, almost half of them were stopped by a person that was legally allowed to carry a concealed handgun.
That include the churches down in Texas,
Yep.
which are probably the best known stories of that. And there are more than one of those. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, more often than not, when an active shooter is stopped by an armed civilian, it gets very little attention.
Mhm.
Of course, it doesn't fit the narrative.
Exactly.
Frank, you did something on the Bullet Soup podcast with it wasn't Jack, it was the other fellow from
No,
Texas,
it's,
right?
it was the Stephen Williford.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. He I got to tell you, when he told me the story about what happened that day and how him and his daughter and a stranger that just happened by, all got together and put an end to what was a horrific situation.
Yeah.
My heart was up in my chest the whole time that I listened to him tell me that story.
Just like No Sound Bites Allowed, if you haven't stopped and listened to the No Sound Bites Allowed or any of the Bullet Soup podcasts, take some time and listen to them. There's really good stuff on both.
We do a lot of research for it. We're passionate about this because the things that people don't get to hear make a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's it, exactly. And that's what we ultimately are about. We're about allowing people to make their own decisions, but giving them the information so that they can make that decision. We're not here to shuffle under the carpet information that we don't necessarily agree with or that we don't want people to hear. We're after the truth, because the only way that we can have a free country is when our citizens are informed. And the only way that they can be informed is by getting the full story.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that as some of you guys know my history, when I tell people, but when somebody says, "Oh, that's the good guy with a gun theory is a myth," and you guys have heard me tell them, not the whole world hasn't heard me tell my story, but you guys have. Do you know I'm living proof that's not true? The good guy with a gun is out there, but the good guy with the gun is like a car with brakes. And I'll draw this analogy for you. How many accidents a year does the NTSB cover across the United States? They can pretty much tell you how many car accidents there have been, all those reports and everything else like that. And in most of those accidents, it was because somebody hit the brakes too late, or didn't hit the brakes at all, or something happened and there was a collision. But if you ask the NTSB, how many accidents didn't happen last year?
Yeah, they can't.
No, that's it, exactly.
Yeah,
they don't have an answer because brakes prevent the accidents. And that's when people say, well, guns in the hands of innocent people, of the civilian population isn't going to stop anything. Cars with brakes. I can't tell you how many civilians are able to stop a shooting before it happens because they just happen to have the gun. Because they stopped it. They already stopped it before it started. They stopped it.
Well, again, I want to just quickly mention, remember, in the Rolling Stone article, the crazed Buffalo shooter said he was considering people with concealed carry. If New York State had the same concealed carry as Texas, he wouldn't be doing it, or at least not doing it in New York State. We can't stop every crazed person, but he's telling us right there that was one of the criteria he had.
Well,
it's a break.
Well, dude, look at where he resided and where he went to school. Right in our neck of the woods, Mike. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right there.
Down the road.
Right down the road from us. Right down the road from us. Where the hell did he go to commit the shooting? Buffalo.
Yeah.
Now you stand and you look at the demographics in Buffalo. You look at the way the vote goes in Buffalo. You look at who's running the show up in Buffalo, and you can pretty much take an assessment of Buffalo and say, what do you think the odds of people concealed carrying in this particular part of the state? And you're going to know that it's a low one because of the demographic. The demographic.
Yeah, the first thing Buffalo mayor called for is more gun control.
Right.
Of course.
Now, if you would look at the same thing in a different county in New York, maybe Shenango.
Yeah.
look at it in Shenango County, look at it in Broome County, and then run those same demographic numbers and then say to yourself, what do you think the percentages of people that might be carrying a gun in those counties would be? At least tenfold higher.
Mhm.
Yeah.
At least
If it would have
tenfold.
happened in Franklin County or Clinton
And-
County, where I'm at,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have happened.
Right. And Shenango County and Broome County are a shitload closer than Buffalo.
Mhm.
He's
This guy
5
did
minutes
not
away. He's 5
he-
minutes away from
Yeah.
that area, and
he
he's
didn't have to drive 3 hours to go kill people. He could have just went 15 minutes down Interstate 88 and gone right down to Broome or Shenango and opened fire on somebody. He would have got resistance. And he probably would have been carried out in a body bag instead of in handcuffs.
Well, I did an interview with a candidate from Rochester, which is insane. Rochester is like the 5th most dangerous city in America. I was looking up the stats and we were talking about it. And that was going to be his number 2. His choice was between Buffalo and Rochester.
I'll be right back. I got to check something.
Okay.
And so he's trying to balance between those two. And I was talking to the guy, the candidate for and people want to find out, it's the 137th Assembly District. And he's telling me that the same criteria that we see in New York City, in Albany, in Rochester, in Buffalo, what do we see that's a commonality between all those places? Massive amounts of gun control, restricting the people's right to be able to arm themselves. We see that there's a poorer population of individuals who can't afford to jump through the hurdles of both time and money that New York State has placed in front of them so that they can't get to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Now, this is very critical because you don't see that in most of upstate New York. As soon as you get out of those large cities, you see that commonality. And we were talking about it before. And again, I ask people, look at the New York Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Report, the GIVE report, put out every year by New York State, top 17 metropolitan areas in New York State. And you will see that the New York SAFE Act, the red flag laws, the ghost gun, nothing is working. The 5-year average, the numbers for the 5-year average of an increase in the number of people who have been shot and injured and killed between 45 and 58%, depending on which of those items you're looking at. No less than a 45% increase, as much as a 58.1% increase. The gun control doesn't work.
Well, there's been multiple studies. And I mean, I've lost count of the number of studies that have concluded that the more armed a population is, the less crime, less violent crime it has.
Of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
Well,
Okay. Because
for criminals
look for the easy mark. Okay. Plain and simple. Criminals look for an easy mark. That's their nature. That's why they turn to crime, is because they want the easy payoff. The easy payout.
Well, when was the last time you saw a weak country invade a superpower?
Exactly.
Well, it's Mike Marshall mentioned it, I think 3 weeks ago when we talked about this, the Emperor of Japan or whatever it was. I'm paraphrasing here, but we won't invade America because there's a gun behind every blade of grass. I know it's taken out of context, but
It was
actually, Japan did try to invade American territory. It was stopped because the population was armed. The Alaskan natives in the Aleutian Islands, because they were armed, they were able to hold off a Japanese invasion. Okay, we've seen that happen over and over throughout history, where they are able to stop invasions. Okay, I mean, the first thing that Ukraine did when Russia invaded was arm their citizens.
It was a
just slowed
beautiful
down the
thing.
rush.
Gentlemen, I hate to do this. I got to cut out early. There's somebody screaming and yelling upstairs. It's probably the wife with the dogs, but I got to go figure out what it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut out a
Well,
little early myself tonight. I
but-
still have not recovered from my late night shooting escapade at the range with my friends that showed up yesterday.
Wonderful.
And next time we talk, I'm going to tell you all the story about how I stabbed the owner of my company yesterday.
Oh God.
All right.
It's a funny story. Looking back retrospectively, it's funny.
Okay, well, just remember
Allegedly.
when seconds count, police are only minutes away. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, you guys be safe.
Have a great night, Jeremy. Thank you.
I'm going to be watching you guys on my phone as I'm taking care of my business around here.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna probably wrap this up here before too much longer as well.
All right, guys, have a good night. Thank you for another interesting evening. Guys,
Yeah,
be
you
safe.
have a great night, Frank.
Take care.
Thank you.
So, Mike, it's crazy when we think about these things. And, I've been talking to people around the country and overseas. And especially, it's funny because I'm talking to people in the United Kingdom in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Agent Black, who sometimes speaks on this
Right.
channel. And we were talking about gun control. We're talking about the violence there. And I know one of the arguments that we hear all the time is, well, if we just get rid of the guns, people will be innocent. Yeah, ask the people of the United Kingdom about the knife crime that they have.
Well,
Ask
exactly.
people in Nice, France, about the crazed guy who rented a truck and ran over 80 people. I mean, criminals, crazed individuals, they find a way. But one thing that we find is that the better armed people are, the less likely they do it. Like you said, like we've said, this is something that they are counting on. They target areas where guns aren't going to be, where police can't get to create distractions so that they can commit these crimes.
Right.
And if we keep believing the lie that is being fed to us by the media and politicians, specifically when we are emotionally distraught, my God, these people died. And that is horrific. And at the very moment that these people die, that is the moment that we hear from a select group of politicians saying, give us more power.
Yeah. Well, we do. Okay. And Kathy Hochul, right after the Buffalo shooting, the first thing that she said, okay, she didn't cite how New York Safe Act failed. No, she says there needs to be federal laws enacted the same as what's enacted in New York State, because he was able to get those 30 round magazines out of another state.
That's so stupid. She also said that we have to eliminate hate speech. I'm sorry, Kathy Hochul, and exactly her exact quote was, the First Amendment is for free speech, but hate speech is not included in free speech. Kathy Hochul, you're an idiot. You don't know what the First Amendment means, and you haven't paid attention to the Supreme Court. Of course, hate speech is included. Hate speech is any speech you don't like. That is exactly why they created the First Amendment. She is out of her mind.
I forget which justice it was, but in one of the rulings on free speech, and I can't cite the case, he said that sometimes what is most needed to be heard is speech that most will consider offensive.
Absolutely.
Okay. And honestly, if we blocked what is classified as hate speech or offensive speech, we wouldn't have, slavery would still exist. Women would not have the right to vote because those were topics that were considered offensive during that era.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have a lot of the equal rights that we have today, because people would not have been allowed to speak out about that because those topics were considered offensive.
Yeah, and if they're
I mean,
saying
we
that,
can go throughout history and
Mhm.
and honestly, like I said, offensive speech. Yeah, you may agree with it, you may not agree with it. Offensive speech oftentimes helps lead to positive change. Now,
right,
true, offensive speech can also have negative impacts. I'm not going to deny that. But oftentimes, what's classified as the most offensive speech does lend itself towards leading to positive change.
yeah. Think about. I have to think about what if this crazed Buffalo, the kid who did the Buffalo shooting, he says he was looking online. He was motivated by acts of vile, insane people in Australia and around the world, and Wakusha. And I have to think, what if? And he did list the Wakusha driving massacre as
Right.
one of the things that motivated him. What if the news media, the social internet overlords, instead of burying that story, brought up the fact that this guy was motivated by critical race theory, black supremacy ideology, and that
Mhm.
that was wrong? That any ideology that promotes violence as a response, that this is sick and twisted and should be questioned. What if we had a public debate and discussion about it, and people denounce any ideology, any religion, anything that says you should commit violence against innocents because you don't like them?
Right.
It's just that simple. And if we had that conversation, maybe that kid doesn't make that final decision that says, well, the only answer is to go out and kill innocent people. Maybe he doesn't do that because he hears the other side. He hears how vile that is, how useless that is, how it creates a cycle, a vortex of ever more increasing violence. Maybe we don't get to have that shooting.
Well,
Why can't they understand
yeah.
that idea?
Yeah. And we honestly, the amount of limitations that we are having on our speech in what is really has become the town square of the modern age through social media and online um, is is not helping things. It's actually making things worse.
Because
Um,
we're editing, we're silencing people.
right. Okay. And we need to be able to have open discussions. People need to be able to hear what other people think, regardless of how extreme they may consider it to be. Because oftentimes, when we allow those extremists to actually speak, it highlights just how extreme they are. And maybe we need to start taking a look at doing other things to help teach people differently.
I think so. I think it's what's the saying? I forget which justice it was. Might have been Blackthorn. I don't recall. He says the only answer to speech, speech we don't like, is more speech.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
talk more.
Okay.
You pointed out. You say, okay, this is you want to be a racist. Fantastic. You're a racist. By the way, why? Let's go through that. Let's have that discussion. Let me go
Mhm.
through what your points are so I can show you why your thinking is flawed. Oh, you hate this religion. Well, let's have a discussion about that. Why you think violence is the right answer for that. And let's try and let me see if I can debunk that for you. Can I give you the reasons why that doesn't work, why it's not effective? Well, let's have those discussions. God
Yeah,
help us.
because right now all we're doing is we're forcing people into echo chambers, and it actually helps propagate the the sentiment of these extremist views. Where if we actually get these extremist views out in the open and into the light will sanitize it. They will actually defeat themselves if we allow free speech. But the more we try to silence them, the more they go underground, and it's easy to get followers in.
Yeah, I find it terrifying that one of the newest thing besides more gun control, which hasn't worked, and there's not one study that shows that it has worked, which is why no politician will quote any study that says
Right.
it works. Uh, is now they're adding in there and hate speech, and you can't speak, and it's like, are you trying to make this worse? Are you
Yeah.
really trying to make it that much
No,
worse?
I actually do believe that they are trying to make it worse. I honestly do. And they are doing it under the guise that this is going to be the solution. And it's not. Okay. And we've talked about this before, and we've talked about it in other forums. Okay. The government has to prove its worth, its need. Okay. And one of the things that they also do is they prove why they need more power over us. So they create stuff that actually ends up making situations worse. They bring out solutions for problems that tend to amplify the situation instead of solving the problem.
Well, there's a big saying that when was the last time anyone saw the government actually fix something, actually have a solution? When was the last time you heard any department of the government shrink in size, spend less money, close down? They don't.
No, they don't.
Because it's about more power. It's about more obedience by the public and less, oh, well, you can live your life.
Now, I do have one good thing that did come out this week, and that is the court ruling against the SEC.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Oh, yeah. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, that came out this week.
There's a whole bunch of stories I missed lately. I've been having a couple of people point out a couple of things that I missed. There's so much happening out there. Like the fact that Vox came out against breastfeeding.
Court rules. Okay, there we go. Actually, I'm gonna go one that is a little less biased. This is Barron's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and put this up on screen. Share screen. Okay, sorry about that. So, this is under Barron's. New ruling threatens SEC enforcement actions. Okay, new ruling. Let's see, where is it? I'm trying to find which court actually did this ruling. Okay, so the case started in 2013 when the SEC accused by George Jarsky of fraudulently operating a pair of hedge funds. Instead of suing Jarsky in federal district court, the agency brought its action in an SEC administrative court, where a judge employed by the agency concluded that Jarsky had committed fraud, and the SEC fined him and his business $1 million. Okay. The Fifth Circuit, he appealed to the Fifth Circuit court, and they basically overturned his ruling on fraud.
No, better than overturned it, they vacated it. For
Yeah,
people who don't know what that means, they wiped it out and said, no, this doesn't even exist.
Right. A 2-1 majority, U.S. Circuit Court Judge Jennifer Walker Elrod said that when the SEC I hate when they do that stuff.
Yeah.
SEC seeks penalties for securities fraud. The Constitution guarantees defendants like Jarsky the right to a jury trial. It often acts as both prosecutor and judge, Elrod said of the SEC, and its decisions have broad consequences for personal liberty and property.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the government. Trump
basically,
saying.
it says that the SEC was acting outside of its authority, and is acting unconstitutionally in its enforcement actions. And it even calls into question
Dodd-Frank.
the right of the SEC to even exist.
That's an interesting argument. Because it's another example of government overreach, government power, manipulating individuals and silencing them when they don't like the result that they're getting.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Which is one of the biggest threats to America right now.
Well, yeah, actually, the biggest threat to America, and one of the reasons why we're seeing such government overreach, is because these governmental agencies, these bureaucratic agencies, have zero accountability to the citizens, because everybody that's there is appointed. They aren't elected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And oftentimes they get in there and they're in there for life. They have no accountability. And they really, even though Congress may have hearings and so forth on various agencies, Congress has no authority over them either, other than to call them in to testify at a hearing.
How many times has Congress called in Google, Facebook, Twitter? How many times has Twitter and all of them admitted that they have algorithms that actively are suppressing, shadow banning, and otherwise infringing on the First Amendment rights of American citizens? I mean, they've been saying this over and over again in court, in front of the Senate and the House, and it's not changed, not once.
Well, look how many times Fauci was called in to testify on COVID. Look how many times, look at what happened with the Iran-Contra scandal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, Congress doesn't have any enforcement authority except over the president.
The president has the enforcement if he exercises it.
Right. Congress' only enforcement authority is over the president, and that's through the impeachment process. Okay. Other than that, Congress has zero authority other than, well, we can stop your funding.
Yeah.
Okay. That's literally it.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes into how much do people really know about what our government can do and what they can't do. And that the fact is that the Constitution is built to make sure that the government can't do things. In fact, they're not supposed to be doing almost anything. They're not our government as it exists right now is nowhere near what was envisioned when our nation was created, because it was never supposed to be this powerful.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've read several books recently about the original intent of the Constitution, and we are so far away from what the original intent was. And honestly, both sides are at fault.
Oh, yeah.
Both sides are at fault for bringing us so far away from where the Constitution, where the original intent of the framers was.
No, I agree with that 100%. But at the moment, we're seeing it's gone into overdrive as the very government that is meant to protect all people in the United States is being led by individuals who are saying, oh, but we prefer only one group of people, and it happens to be those who, if you're the ultra MAGA, then you have a problem, and you're not the ones who are trying to look out for it. They're dividing America. When you start labeling people ultra MAGA, I don't even know what that means. No one knows what it means because it doesn't mean anything. It's like, what does MAGA mean? Make America great again. It represents America first. That's my nation. Of course, I want it to be first. If you're in Britain, in the United Kingdom, or France, or Germany, or Canada, you want your nation's policies to reflect you first.
Right.
That's not a bad thing for any nation in the world. But somehow, by saying I want an America first set of policies, that's the ideology we should be working with. I love my country. I want my country to be financially and in every aspect secure and prominent. And they're trying to tell us, well, if you believe that, you're a problem.
Yeah.
Literally, the opposite side of that discussion, and not being ultra MAGA, is saying that America should be, if not last, definitely not first.
Right.
Why would you want to do that? Imagine you go to your job and you go, hey, I want you to promote everybody except me. I want everyone to get a raise except me. I want to be the last one to get a raise. Would you ever say that in your job? Because I don't think anyone would. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say I should get the raise first. I'm doing a great job. I want the company to make more money so they can make me more money, and I want to get the raise first.
Well, and we have to look at the flip side, because it's just as bad on the other side of the aisle with how Republicans are classifying Democrats as ultra liberal, and how they're classifying them as socialists or communists, et cetera,
not
et
all of them.
cetera. I mean, you name it.
I do think there is I have to admit, I have no problem calling out progressives and socialists. I do not agree with their ideology. They're not all Democrats. All Democrats absolutely aren't, and I say it often. That's a splinter group. of the
Exactly.
Democratic
And
Party.
that's what we need. Okay. And that's not what's being called out. Okay. Honestly, a very large portion of Republicans are trying to classify all Democrats as being socialists.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair.
No, it's not. Okay. And it's just like Biden's trying to portray Republicans as being ultra MAGA.
I personally think, if anyone wants to call me ultra MAGA, please do. I don't consider that an insult at all. Please call me ultra MAGA, because yes, I believe America first. I want the raise first. I want my business to do well, and I want America to do well. Because I don't want the recession that we're in. I'm not Bill Maher. I'm not asking people to be in a recession. I want everyone to do well.
Well, early in our history, okay, after the Constitution, America was an isolationist country.
Yeah.
We stayed out of global politics. Okay, and we concerned ourselves with America and what we could do to make America better. Okay, whether it was economically, whatever. Okay, that was our emphasis, that was our focus. And then we got into the colonization mode, of where we started trying to take over everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a good thing. And then we started getting into where we started playing the world's police force.
Really bad idea.
Okay. And we need to go back to being more isolationists. Okay. As in, if it's not directly impacting the United States, we need to stay out of it.
No, I'd make that case with the Ukraine. $40 billion we just gave them, $55 billion. We gave them $55 billion. And at the moment, how much baby food would that be able to buy? How much? We don't have a plan for the food shortage that the White House has already announced that people are. When I was just talking to my family, and some of my members of my family are telling me, well, it's not going to be that bad. The White House told us there's going to be it is a global food shortage. There are riots at this time throughout Africa and in Sri Lanka. The country is falling apart. Will we become Sri Lanka? No. But it's going to be the worst that the United States has ever seen since the Great Depression. That is a fact, because we've never had a food shortage. And at the same time, we're having an energy crisis at the same time. We've never experienced that, and we're in a recession at this moment. So we have never experienced this. It is going to be bad, far worse than what anyone has ever experienced. And they're telling me, well, it can't be that bad because the news isn't talking about it. I'm like,
there's a reason why the news isn't talking about it.
It's because
it's because a lot of the policies that have been put in place by this administration have directly caused this problem.
Absolutely.
That we're getting ready to see. Okay.
Absolutely.
Policies put in force by this administration is what's led to the energy crisis. Yeah. Policies that's put forth by this administration, and some of them, I'm going to point blank say it, some that were put in place by the previous administration have directly impacted inflation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But while we have this inflation, while we have this environment, while we know that there's going to be a food shortage, at the same time that there's an energy shortage, at the same time that there's increasing inflation, stagflation, possibly a depression in the fall of 2022, we know this. It's already been discussed by economists and by the government. And it's been stated that this will happen. It's not me extrapolating or trying to inflating. They've said this. We know it's going to happen. And we spent $55 billion increasing more of the inflationary pressure to give it to Ukraine. And I'm asking myself, and you still haven't come up with a plan for the food shortage. We have a baby food shortage. We know there's going to be a bigger food shortage, and you haven't come up with a single plan?
No. And that baby food shortage was caused by the FDA.
Yeah.
Okay. Under Biden.
Yeah. And they've known about it for months and did nothing until the polls went.
Even though Abbott Laboratories proved, the CDC proved, the FDA proved that the two babies that died as a result of that bacteria were not infected by Abbott Laboratories, except the place remained shut down because they found the same bacteria of a different strain, didn't have the same DNA markers, in a non-food processing area of the plant.
Yeah, it's insane. And it just goes back to the same, all of this. And people may say, well, Mike, you guys, Mike's to two of us, may say, well, you guys started talking about the Buffalo shooter, and now you're talking about food shortages and what's going on with the Biden-Harris administration. Well, the through line, in case anyone got lost in it and said, well, how did you get there? Or you came in the middle and said, well, you're talking about one thing. The through line is that this is the government at every step that is saying, you don't have freedom, you don't have power, you must obey. That's how we got here, because they're more concerned about making you obey and keeping their power than actually taking the steps necessary to fix a problem, or at least address the problem.
And honestly, if government would get out of it, the problem would fix itself.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's supposed to do. Government, I believe it was Ben Franklin who said, government is only meant to do that which the people cannot do for themselves.
Right. And when government intervenes in areas where people can do for themselves, it creates problems.
Well, yeah, because the government doesn't know how to do anything. The government's only built to do two things, maybe three, to have a military and to to have a military and collect taxes is essentially what the government can do well. Name
Mhm.
something else that the government does well. I can't.
And that actually is one of the things that a lot of the founding generation of this country were against was, well, actually both of those things, military and taxes, standing military and taxes.
Yeah. But those are the only two things that and actually you don't need taxes because the states and individuals can through their donations, and we are the most generous, most largest number of donations in the world come from America. We
Mhm.
make more donations as individuals and bigger amounts per individual than anywhere in the world. We make more donations than most countries make as GDP in a year. So you can't tell me Americans can't have enough money to be able to build a new school. I mean, that's how we got schools in the first place. It was
That's
individuals
exactly.
paying for it.
And that's also communities took care of their impoverished.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't until government started stepping in that we started seeing larger and larger areas of impoverished people. Okay.
That's why people are trapped
Because
into
when
a
the
cycle.
community took care of people that were impoverished, the community taught those people how to become self sufficient.
Yeah.
When the
didn't have
government
to know-
steps in, they just hand people money. They don't teach them how to get out of the situation that they're in.
Yeah. It's always the same because how many people have said, I can't get out? The system is built to keep you in, but it's not built to get you out. It's not built to make you independent or successful or even to get back on your feet. It's meant to
And,
keep you subservient.
and it's designed that way intentionally. Because if you're subservient to the government, you won't go against the government.
Yeah. If they're giving you your food, you know what? You're biting the hand that feeds you?
Right.
Probably not.
Right. And and people that are put in that situation are more likely to give away more and more freedoms and allow more and more government control.
True. And that's why 160 million people receive some form of government aid to this day. At this very moment, 160 million people get some
Yeah.
amount of
That's
money.
almost half of the United States.
Yeah. It's about as many people as people who work. We have 165 million people who are working and about 160, it floats between 150, 160 million people who get a check of some amount from the government every month.
Yeah. And when the population is only 329 million, as
There you
of the
go.
last census, okay, you're talking literally half of America gets some form of government assistance.
Yeah. We cannot run, and that's why we have $31 trillion in debt, why our money is becoming worthless. We are becoming the banana republic of the South America. And the true danger of that, because I know there's people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Andrew Yang have come out publicly and said, don't worry, we can just print money forever because no one's ever going to call us on it. Well, no, that's not true, because once anyone does call us on it, and they may, because of China, because of Russia, because of global geopolitical actions that are going on,
Mhm.
if even one country calls us on our debt, the dominoes fall. If we stop using the dollar as the reserve currency, the money that the rest of the world uses, our economy falls so fast that we become a bigger banana republic. People who've been alive since the 1980s will know what that means, than we have ever seen before on the face of the earth. It's just insane.
Okay, well, right now we are indebted to China for $1.06 trillion.
That's a huge amount.
It is. It's huge. Okay. I think India was the next one. And it's over $1 trillion.
We're up to $1 trillion with India. I didn't. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Let me verify that.
I don't doubt it. It's just insane.
No, we owe 216 billion to India.
Oh, great.
Okay.
That means China has to be at least 3.
Okay. Russia dumped 84% of its U.S. debt holdings. We originally owed Russia $298 billion.
These numbers are insane. These are numbers you use to tell the distance between the Earth and the Moon, or the planet.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous how much that is more time than human beings have been on the face. It's almost more time than if every dollar represented 1 second. 1 second. It is almost more time than all life on the planet Earth has existed. Just think about that. If every dollar we owe is a second, it is almost more time than all life has existed on the planet Earth.
Now, Japan. Guess how much we owe to Japan?
Well, Japan used to, the 90s, Japan was huge on US debt. So I'd have to imagine it's got to be at least 500 billion.
$1.3 trillion.
Oh, well, there you
go. We owe most of our money we owe to Japan and China.
That's insane.
Top 10 countries that we owe money to. I'm waiting for it to load here. Okay.
By the way, I want to be very clear for people because I looked it up. For 1 trillion seconds, 1 trillion seconds would be no less than 31,709.8 years.
Wow.
We have 30 of them. So 30 times 31,000. Just really doing quick math here. Just so people, this has got me going now. And I'll just do it real quick. So 30 times 31. And that equals, come on, stupid computer, 930,000 years. 930,000 years. That's, I was wrong. That's more time than all life has been on the face of the earth. And that's just rounding the numbers down. I'm rounding down. If we actually did the actual number, it would be over 100,000. It'd be over 1 million years. The Earth hasn't. The Earth may not have been that old. It's longer than life has been on Earth.
Yeah. Okay. Guess how much we owe ourselves?
We owe the most. I believe it's about 60% of all the debt in the United States is held by the public.
Okay. So $6.2 trillion is what the United States owes to the United States.
Okay.
3.5 trillion of that has been robbed from mutual funds. 1.2 trillion of that comes from depository institutions. 342.8 billion of that has been taken from state and local governments. 804.7 billion of that was stolen out of private pension funds. 252.2 billion was stolen from its insurance companies. 342.8 billion was stolen from state and local government pension funds, and $141.1 billion is from U.S. savings bonds. I'm surprised they must wrap that into Social Security must have been wrapped into state and local government pension funds.
Gotta be.
Because it's not saying how much money is owed to Social Security.
But that's huge. It's one of the huge things.
Mm-hmm.
But again,
okay. And then Japan, we owe 1.2 trillion. China, 1.1 trillion, and this was in 2020.
So those numbers
and it's increased since then.
Of course. And it's increased
United
more.
States,
Increased
UK, we owe 431 billion. Ireland, we owe 307 billion.
Little tiny
Luxembourg,
Ireland.
we owe 291 billion.
People can't even tell you where Luxembourg is.
Exactly. Switzerland, 261 billion. These are the top 10.
Luxembourg is in the top 10? Luxembourg?
Yeah. Luxembourg is number 6.
By the way, people, if you're wondering, Luxembourg is in Europe. It's a very tiny country over by the Netherlands. It's tiny.
Switzerland, we owe 261 billion. Brazil, we owe 255.3 billion. Belgium, we own 234.8 billion. And Taiwan, we owe $234 billion. That's the top 10. Ridiculous. And there's a lot of countries that did not make that list.
Oh, we got countries around the world that we owe money to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just ridiculous. And again, this is government controlling people. This is government using that money and that debt to say, you can't question us. You can't go out of line because you can't afford the consequence.
And that was, again, I keep going back to it, but we have to realize where our country came from. And in order to understand where we are now, one of the big things that the founding generation, again, was very much against was the amount of debt that the United States had. Okay. The founding generation did not want the United States to be in debt because they knew the more debt that the United States had, especially the more debt it had outstanding to other countries, the more influence those other countries would have over the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. And that they don't understand that. And what a lot of people don't understand is all this free stuff that, quote unquote, free stuff that government's giving us. They don't understand that a lot of the money that's being used to pay for that is coming from our enemies.
Yeah, and from taxes on us, but and it restricts our freedom. It restricts every aspect of our freedom.
But like I said, we owe money to people that a lot of America would consider our enemies.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know what a lot of people don't realize?
When we talk about Russia, when we talk about China, when we talk about countries in the Middle East that absolutely hate us, okay, we owe money to these people that are classified as our enemies.
Yeah.
And much of it in amounts that we are never going to be able to pay back.
No. We've gone long past that. In fact, you know, when we were the first big way that the public was warned about this, that everyone does not understand? The Wizard of Oz.
What's that?
The Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
the book and the movie. Here's something that's going to blow people who are watching the show. They're going to be amazed by this. I bet you didn't know that the Wizard of Oz is an economic warning. The gold brick road is the gold standard that existed before we did what we're doing now. The US dollar used to be based on how much gold we had. The
Right.
Emerald City, well, that was about having the dollar connected to the gold. The Wicked Witch of the West was the leading people, one of the leading personalities for the Fed that were trying to change America from the gold standard to what we now have, which is a fiat currency, which just means that we trust in America because we trust in America. That's why the dollar says in America we trust, because there's no asset behind it. There's no value. It is the original cryptocurrency.
Right.
Literally, it's the original cryptocurrency. The US dollar is backed by the belief that America will continue to exist. And that's what the Wizard of Oz was saying. Don't do it. And instead of throwing water of truth on the Wicked Witch of the West, instead, Dorothy decided to hang out with her and become her best friend. And look at where we are.
Right. I mean, honestly, when we started going away from a commodity based valuation of our money, then or commodity backed currency, that's when we really started having a lot more issues in our country.
True.
Okay, because at that point, our government literally started losing control. Okay, because they could just endlessly print money.
Yeah. And as long as we were the biggest, meanest, strongest people in the world, no one would ever call us on it.
Right.
And now people are on the edge, on the verge of calling us on it. And the government's terrified. The government's terrified that American citizens are realizing that part of the problem are the very politicians and the policies and the departments that have been put together to silence us.
Right. And that's honestly, if we take and look at global events, that's one of the big reasons why we consider China as an enemy, is because they are starting to call us on our bullshit.
Yeah. Now, I think it's important we mention something here, Mike, because people may be listening to this and say, but didn't you just say, call me ultra MAGA? Yes. I can criticize my government. I can criticize the failures of my government under Democrats and Republicans going back decades. I can highlight the consequences of those poor decisions in my government and still say, and I believe in America first. I believe in make America great again, because I'm saying, let's fix those problems. Let's return to the freedoms that we used to have. Let's stop this cycle that is making America so problematic and so weak. Yes, MAGA doesn't mean I can't question the government. Being ultra MAGA doesn't mean I can't say America has flaws. It means that I realize that if we fix the flaws, if we limit the government, America will be greater than it is today and has been and hasn't been for decades at the least.
Well, honestly, these problems go back to well over a century. These problems started. Okay, they started towards actually a lot. Some people will trace it back to the founding of National Bank. Okay, which was under Thomas Jefferson. They think that was a start of it, and that's when we started going under a debt type of economy system. And you can even go fast forward, and we can see a lot of issues going, even getting worse shortly after the Civil War.
Yeah.
Okay, that's when states lost a lot of their rights, was shortly after the Civil War. And then we
Yeah.
fast forward ahead, and we start seeing the rise of progressivism at the beginning of the 20th century, 1900s.
Yeah.
Okay. And each step, we see government grabbing a little more, a little bit more, a little bit more of things that they really don't have any authority over. We saw that, like I said, with Jefferson and the creation of the National Bank, eventually, what would become the Federal Reserve. We see that after the Civil War, when the government started taking over a lot of civil rights. I mean, not civil rights, state rights.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that again in the early 1900s with the rise of progressivism and the rise of bureaucracies. Jump forward again, 1930s, and we start seeing another rise because that's when we start in with welfare state.
And they're all done because we're trying to help America. The statement is always the government saying, well, we have to help you. We have to help the solution. We have to help you get to the solution. And we never get to the solution. We just get more government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem.
And actually, if you look, each of those things that I just cited leads to the next one in line.
Yeah, you can't do it without what you did prior to it. Yeah.
Right. Okay, and we're seeing a natural progression again with what's going on today. Okay, we saw another progression right around the time of World War II. We saw World War I. We saw another progression around World War II. We saw another progression during the Equal Rights era in the 60s. Okay, and we keep seeing these progressions of our government taking over more and more control, but each step ahead of it was supposedly government solving a problem, except that step ended up leading to the next problem that government's going to have to solve.
Yeah, because government doesn't know how to do anything except maintain power. And that's like the only thing they're really successful at.
And if we take and look at them, each step along the way is another step further away that we get from the Constitution, from the original intent of the Constitution.
True. Very true.
Okay. And through that progression, we see that we are getting further and further away from the original intent of the Constitution, and that is lending or opening the door for our government to get even further away from the original intent of our Constitution.
That's why we're in such a scary point at this time when we have, and I really feel bad for the next generation because they have never read the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the ability, some of them, to read the cursive, to be able to read the original document.
Right.
And they're relying more and more on the government telling them, well, this is the right you have, even though they're lying. I mean, Joe Biden, how many times has he said, the Second Amendment, you could never own a machine gun. You could never own a cannon. They didn't have machine guns. Yes, they did have cannons. People could buy them. You could have machine guns. That is a lie. That is a flat, absolute, documented lie. And there are millions of kids who think it's true.
But also, more and more people are relying on the government to tell them what the Constitution says.
Which is terrible. You can't
Okay,
rely.
and that to me is terrifying.
No, it's absolutely terrifying. You're asking the jailer if you should be in jail, and how long you should be in the jail.
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying that we are relying on the government to tell us what the document that is supposed to control the government says.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's because people don't know. They don't know any better. And the best way for the government to make sure, or to make the best way for aspects of the government to make sure that we don't take the time to figure it out, control the kids, teach them to obey, divide the public, demonize one set of people, and corrupt another set of people. And that's how we get the Buffalo shooter.
Yep. And categorize us as this or that. Okay. Instead of categorizing us as United States citizens, categorizing us as African Americans, Asian Americans, white Americans, Latinos,
I'm fine with
LGBTQA plus,
yeah,
man,
categories never-
woman, etc., etc., etc.
The categories will never, ever end. There will
Exactly.
always be another group. And then it's going to go down to the skinny people, the tall people, the fat people, the short people, the people with mustaches, the people with, I don't know, bald heads. They're going to go through every list out there. There's always going to be a category, always going to be a group, because it's about dividing and conquering.
Right. And one of the big things they are really trying to promote now is rich versus poor.
Yeah. And I always find it interesting. Rich people are bad. Who wants to be poor? Right. Think about the argument. And again, listen to that argument. They say MAGA is bad. Okay, so you want everyone to get the raise except you. Okay, rich people versus poor. You don't want anyone to be rich. Everyone who's saying that you want to be poor. We have to understand the argument, what they're saying. Abortion. Okay, so you're saying you want to be able to kill the baby in the 9th month. And in each of these cases, when you suddenly say, okay, so the converse, but if we agree with your argument, this is what the converse is true. Therefore, you want to be the last on the list, or at least not the first. You don't want to get the raise. You want someone else to get it instead of you. You want to, these are all the things that you're doing. And when you say, do you want that for your life? No one's going to say, I want to be poor. I want to be the last one to get a raise. I want to be the last one with rights and freedoms. No one says yes to that. But yet the media won't be honest. That's what this means. Because that is what it means. And I dare any politician to explain, to sit down with me and try and tell me how I am wrong. I am happy to, and if they can't, because I'll be open to say, oh, well, I got it wrong. Please show me the evidence. And everything that we can point to, and we've been discussing it, and this program discusses it every week. It's like, no, that's actually what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
This is why English is.
And I'm trying to find it right now. There was some prominent person in the abortion debate, that actually wants to allow women to be able to abort their children up to 2 months after they're born.
What?
I can't remember who it is, and I'm trying to find it right now.
Use DuckDuckGo. Don't use Google.
That?
Don't use Google, use DuckDuckGo, because I guarantee you, if that you can find that quote, you're not going to find it on Google. It's going to be buried on Google. Google likes to bury certain stories. That's insanely insulting and terrifying.
Yeah, I saw it in one of my feeds.
But that's eugenics. I mean, that is what Margaret Sanger was doing. That is what the origin of the whole promotion of abortion is about, the eugenics. And we now have our government again taking away people's rights, and in that case from the most vulnerable people. Again, government is creating a bigger problem that divides more people without providing a solution, and we should be aware of that. I mean, that's why it was a state issue, and it should be a state issue.
Yeah, I agree. It should be a state issue. It should be. I would even venture to say that it should be even.
Yeah.
Even more local than that. It should be at least maybe even down to the county level. Okay.
Oh, did I find
I think
it?
I found it, but I'm looking right now.
Yeah, I just pulled it up I'm looking at DuckDuckGo.
Okay. This is actually activist mothers say activists. Okay. Who's the activist? Should be able to abort children after birth, even at 2 years old.
What? Who's
Yeah.
Where's that from?
BPR, BizPack Review.
BizPack. Okay.
Okay, I'll actually bring it up on the feed.
That's just so crazy.
It is. Okay, I'm trying to figure out who it was that said this.
Well, I found coming out of the Washington Standard, March 9th of 2022, Maryland Senate Bill 669 legalizes infanticide up to 28 days. That's
28 days after birth. That's
after birth.
ridiculous. Okay, so this would be the Yankee Cowboy. Yeah, and basically this woman says that it's always going to be her choice. In other words, the mother's choice. So if they're 2 years old, the interviewer says, and the woman continues, it's always her choice. I could kill my 2-year-old, the interviewer asked incredulously. It's a woman's right to choose, the woman stated. To kill their child at any point, the interviewer questioned the woman. It's the woman's right to choose. Okay, so basically this woman is saying that mothers should be able to kill their children at any point from conception on up through even after adulthood.
Yeah. It's scary.
Okay. And my jaw dropped when I saw that.
Well, again, it goes back to this is news and this is information that is suppressed, that the public doesn't want, that certain political factions do not want the public to even discuss.
Right.
And that's the problem. And it goes back to, again, the government's trying to control what's happening in, and again, it doesn't matter whether you agree with a point of view or not. It's that you're being demonized for even having the question. Because that's
exactly.
and that's what Kathy Hochul's doing when it comes to the answer to the Buffalo shooting is you can't speak. You can't ask questions. That's what appointed Governor Kathy Hochul is saying. You can't question this. Doesn't matter if I agree or disagree with anything that the Buffalo shooter said. I can't question anything about it, nor the response of the government to this incident.
Right. And that's really what's really terrifying on that is you can't question government response.
Which means I have no freedom, and they're controlling the way. If I can't speak, that means you are not being allowed to think. They are subverting our lives.
Right.
That is absolutely not allowed. New York State Constitution, federal Constitution. That is not America.
No, it's not. Okay, and it is 1984.
Yeah.
George Orwell. It is the Minority Report.
Yeah.
It is Animal Farm. I mean, you name the dystopian novel of total government control, and that is what we are on the path to.
With a lot of bright lights and a lot of fancy wording and great slogans and commercials to make you think, isn't this the most wonderful thing you've ever done? I just don't have the words.
No, I don't. I don't either. And I want to point out one other thing, though, while we're here, is this isn't just happening in the United States.
Oh, no.
Okay. We see this happening all over the world. And this is not just an orchestrated here. This is a globalization plan that is being put forth to where the elites control everyone else. And the thing is nobody knows who the elites actually are. And the people that are pushing for this don't even realize that they are not the elite.
Well, even if someone doesn't want to go down that route, let's think of it from another way that no one can question. America is the standard, the flag bearer. We're the point of reference for freedom in the world. And if we're moving that flag post, if we're moving the point of reference further and further away from freedom, closer to authoritarianism, we're moving it away from individual freedom and into government control. Every other nation is looking at that. If they're not already an autocratic dictatorship or communist state, every other free nation is pointing towards America and going, that's our guiding star. That's our North Pole that they're trying to track to. And if it's moving towards a less free society, everyone else who can't even get to where we are is getting less free too.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you think the reason why is, that is irrefutable.
Well, the United States used to lead the Freedom Index. And if people don't know what the Freedom Index is,
Yeah, I know it.
it is a ranking of countries based upon how free they are. And there's a lot of criteria that are based upon that everything is based upon.
Obviously the lead-in. I don't want to kill
the Cato Institute
Mhm.
is the one that actually puts this out every year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so. Mhm.
Okay, and go ahead and pull this up. The United States no longer leads the Freedom Index.
Nope.
Okay, in fact, we haven't for quite a few years.
Yeah, a decade, I think.
Okay, and the Freedom Index is a global measurement of personal, civil, and economic freedoms. Okay, and this is the 7th annual index, and they use the rule of law, security and safety, movement, religion, association, assembly, and civil society, expression and information, relationships, the size of government, legal system, property rights, sound money, freedom to trade internationally, and regulation are the criteria for ranking on this Freedom Index.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice, well, actually, let's see. The top 10 places in order were Switzerland, New Zealand, Denmark, Estonia, Ireland, Canada, and Finland, tied at 6. Australia, Sweden, and Luxembourg. Selected jurisdictions ranked as follows: United Kingdom, 14th. Germany, Japan, and the United States tied for 15th. Taiwan, 19th. Chile, 28th. Hong Kong, 30. South Korea, 31st. France, 34th. Argentina, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. We are losing more and more freedom, and we are getting lower and lower on our freedom, on the Freedom Index.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
It is. It is. Okay. And for the rest of the world to look at the United States as being the standard bearer of freedom and find out that we are actually tied for 15th is that what I said?
Yeah, it was tied for 15th
in the world for freedom. That means there's 15 other countries that are ranked more free than we are.
Yeah. Luxembourg keeps coming up.
Yeah, it does.
Makes me wonder. It's like, what the hell is going on in Luxembourg?
Okay. So we need to understand that if we are the standard bearer of free societies, then we, the people, need to actually start demanding back our freedoms.
Yeah, because no one's going to Luxembourg. That's just so people know. If you think, well, I'll just go to Luxembourg, you guys keep talking about it. Luxembourg is smaller than Salt Lake City and has fewer people.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, you're not going there.
Yeah, we we don't understand what we're doing to ourselves.
No, we don't.
Honestly, we don't. And one of our purposes of the Liberty First Foundation and No Silence Bites Allowed is to educate people so that they start understanding exactly what they are doing to themselves, so that people can understand exactly what we are allowing our government to do to us.
Yeah.
Okay. And as many of you already know, I'm a huge proponent of the original intent of the Constitution.
Mhm.
And the original intent of the Constitution, yeah, it's there in the words in the Constitution, but it goes beyond that. Because ultimately, what gave the Constitution its authority were the states, the 13 original states of the United States. And we have to look at what the states, the original 13 states, thought the Constitution said. Because that's how they decided whether or not to ratify the Constitution. So we need to go into looking at the intent of the Constitution beyond what the Constitution says and look at the intent that was, number one, held in the convention that was held in Pennsylvania, but two, the debates that was held in each of the states that decided to ultimately ratify the Constitution. That's how we can get to the true intent of the Constitution. And we are so far away from that. Until we actually start restoring that original intent back, we're going to have a government that gets more and more out of control.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
I think we probably should go ahead and wrap this up. We've been live for over 2 hours now. I apologize for being late today. I had extenuating circumstances that prevented me from being here on time. However, I was able to get the broadcast up and running and allowing you guys to get started on everything. And I do appreciate everybody filling in for that. With that, I'm Mike Marshall. I want to thank Michael Vasquez, Frank Johnson, and Jeremy Bishop for all being in attendance tonight and joining the conversation. And we ask every week, please like and share this with others to help us spread the word. Okay. The only way that we can actually expand as a country and become greater as a nation is through education. We ask you to like, share, comment, and help us get the word out. Okay. We can't do this alone. We need your help. Plain and simple. Okay. We are four voices. That's who we are. And with your help, we can actually reach far more people. And we'll reach a lot of people that have the same ideals and understand that we do need to start changing this country.
Yeah.
If you want to help support us, again, like I said, like and share, subscribe to our broadcast. You can also help us out with membership through U.S. Law Shield. We're an affiliate of theirs. And if you sign up for a membership through our link, then we can get credit for that. And that will help to further get the word out. If you want to make a financial donation to us, you can do that through L1F.us, our website. There are links there that would allow you to make donations through PayPal or Cash App. With that, I'm Mike Marshall. Thank you. And you guys have a great week.
Enjoy, everyone.